MO. It is December. No, it is January. It is January 2021, and that means it's time to do our last 2020 wrap-up, and I read 9 books. None of them are in order, apparently. Let me try putting them in order. I read 9 books in December, and I did 2 readathons in December, which I think is really good. I did the 1,000 Doors Readathon, which was originally in November of 2020, and I hope that they bring back next year because I loved it. I also participated in the Cloak and Dagger Christmas. I haven't done my wrap-up for that yet, so you will see my wrap-up for that in my very last Vlogmas Bookmas vlog, which comes out later this week. Here are the books that I read in December. I read Sara Gran's The Infinite Blacktop, which is the 3rd in the Claire DeWitt series. It follows Claire DeWitt, who is a offbeat detective. This book follows 3 timelines. It follows her as a child and how she became a detective. It also follows her after her mentor has died and she's working on getting her detective license in California. And lastly, it follows the present day where she has recently been hit by a car on purpose. People are trying to murder her. So it's kind of these 3 storylines and how they converge. Although I think that this could be read as a standalone, I think it's better to go ahead and read the whole series and read them in order. I haven't read the other books in a while, and there were a lot of things that I had forgotten that come up in this book, so I think it's better to read them in order and maybe read them in kind of quick succession. I like Sara Gran's writing a lot. It's very gritty, it's very violent, it's very modern noir. I don't like violent books that much, but I do see how it works in noir books, and I do see how it works in Sara Gran's books. So that was the first book that I read this month. Eating Wildly, Foraging for Life, Love, and the Perfect Meal by Ava Chin. I had recently got this at a Goodwill. I wanted to pick it up and read it because my friend is a forager and I thought I would pass it along to her, but I really did not like this book and I really can't recommend it to my friend or to anyone else. I have kind of a scathing review on my blog, madcatquilts.com. I also talk about it in those vlogs, so if you are interested in hearing more negative thoughts about it, definitely go check that out. I'll just say that this is a memoir of Ava Chin in the mid-2010s, and she has discovered foraging and she is parlaying it into a job and into her career as a reporter. It follows that progression in her life as well as her dealing with family issues. She's dealing with her father abandoning her when she was young. She's dealing with how her mother's and her relationship was after that, and it's dealing with the decline in health of her grandmother, who was her mother figure for her entire life. Memoirs are books that people write about their lives in their own words, so there's something to be said for that, but ultimately I think the message in this book and the way that she went about healing herself was not healthy and was quite problematic. I think the foraging aspects were okay. I think in this book she makes it clear that she's a novice forager, and I think she kind of leans heavily into that, and it comes across as if you don't trust her because she's telling you that she doesn't know what she's doing so often. I think a lot of the foraging aspects of this backs that up. She puts recipes in here and they're not very good recipes. They're not very well thought out, they're not well written, they're barely using the foraged materials that she's talking about. So I think all that kind of lends itself to you not trusting the writer, even though this is her actual story. So definitely would not recommend this one. I'm glad I read it, of course, and it did help me complete a prompt for the 1,000 Doors Readathon. The next book that I read in December was Kate Made Ghost Stories. This is another nonfiction book. It's just 2 friends in the 1980s. The authors are David J. Seibold and Charles J. Adams III. They put out a call for ghost stories having to do with Cape May, New Jersey, which is a historic beach town in South Jersey. This is what they got back. So these are stories as they were told to them. Sometimes they research them a little more. They're pretty flimsy ghost stories in that, you know, maybe they're cold spells, maybe they're bumps in the night, maybe they're things moving unexpectedly. There's no real story that is hard evidence. It was a very quick read. I love books that are set in places that I know and that I recognize, so that one was exciting. If you're interested in local ghost stories about New Jersey, we have a lot of them. This is a good one. Another book that I read in December was It's Fine by Me by Per Petterson. I've read a few other Per Petterson books. I read this as a translated work, which fulfilled a prompt for the Thousand Doors Readathon. I really, really enjoy his books. I've read 2 other of his. I've read his short story collection. I've read another novel. It seems to be that all his work is semi-autobiographical, coming-of-age stories of young men, how they deal with their past traumas, their future traumas, the traumas that they've created for other people, and how they kind of live their lives. Although this book wasn't groundbreaking in any way, I really enjoy his writing. I think you do get a sense of Per Petterson's writing through each translated work. That was, I believe, the last book that I read for the Thousand Doors Readathon. I've had Magpie Murders by Anthony Horowitz for a few years. I actually tried reading it when we first moved to Asbury Park, and I couldn't really get into it. After reading The House of Silk and really enjoying that, I wanted to go ahead and read this one. So this is a book within a book. You are following Susan Ryland, who is an editor and publisher, and she is reading the latest work by her publishing company's star writer. Magpie Murders is that book. So you start off with a chapter of Susan Ryland, and then you jump into reading that book. So you are reading it along with her. And then there is a mystery in the book, and there's a mystery outside of the book, and Susan Ryland has to solve both those mysteries. And she does. I don't think that's spoilers in a mystery. Someone solves it. I really like this book. I liked how Anthony Horowitz played with making a Poirot ripoff, and I like how he had nods to the writing world. I really enjoy that when P.D. James does that. I like when writers kind of tip their hat to their community or make fun of them. I think that's really interesting. Anthony Horowitz has a sequel to this book. It either came out or it's coming out in 2021, and I am really excited to read that, especially because this book, in my mind, ends on kind of an ambiguous note, and I'm interested to see where the next book goes, especially if you're interested in parodies of murder mysteries that you already know, like Agatha Christie. I would definitely recommend picking this one up. Next, I listened to 2 audiobooks. I listened to a short story by Jeffery Deaver. Jeffery Deaver, I guess, is known for the stories of The Bone Collector. This was a short story following a old-time reporter, a print reporter, who is kind of coming to grips with the idea that he's not made for the digital reporting world. He's not happy. He knows that he has to retire. He's not feeling well, but a story comes up and he wants to kind of make this his last story. He gets involved in a friendship with a young reporter who is all about the digital, and so it's partly about him researching this and how a reporter can be a detective, and it's partly about her seeing the benefits of old-time detective / reporting. It was fine. I did enjoy the writing, but it was only about 2 hours long, and the short story really took a drastic turn from the first half to the second half, and I didn't really like the second half and where that went. I see why they did it, and it didn't like hurt the story or anything. I just didn't like the voice that the second half was kind of told in. So I'd be interested to read something else that he wrote and see if I liked it as much. Buried was a free audiobook, so it fulfilled a prompt for Cloak and Dagger Christmas, and it was fun. And then I finished another audiobook, which was also free. This was online, and it was The Moving Finger by Agatha Christie. This is the 3rd or 4th, depending on where you look, in the Miss Marple series. This one follows a brother and a sister. The brother is injured, and he is prescribed to go to the country and have a peaceful time. But as we know from mystery books, a small village in the British countryside is not always the most peaceful place. When his sister and his peaceful existence in this small town is marred by a poison pen letter, he realizes that many other people in the village have gotten poison pen letters. Miss Marple doesn't even show up until the last 20% of the book. She's not in it at all. I enjoyed The Moving Finger. It's hard to tell how much I enjoy these Agatha Christie books because I've been listening to them all on audio. So I've listened to 3 Miss Marple books in the last 3 months, and the first one I loved, the second one was okay, and this one I think is okay as well. I like all of them. I think if I had to put them in order, it would be Murder at the Vicarage, The Moving Finger, and then The Body in the Library. I've decided after The Moving Finger to take a break from Agatha Christie because they are kind of all blurring together, so I'm not going to read any Agatha Christie in January, and I'm probably not going to read any of her work for a little while just to kind of clear my mind. The next book that I read in December was Raymond Chandler's The Big Sleep. This also fit into Cloak and Dagger Christmas. I thought I had read some Raymond Chandler because I have read some Dashiell Hammett and I've read some Jim Thompson, and I really enjoy noir. I've never read any Raymond Chandler. This book was awesome. It was so funny. It was so good. I can't believe it's a debut novel. I think this book probably set the bar for noir going forward. It was written in 1939, so noir did come before it. I think this probably was a benchmark for noir authors and for noir readers. Philip Marlowe gets hired by an older gentleman whose life is winding down, and his 2 daughters are very wild and destructive. They've each done things to kind of sully his name. He just wants a few things figured out and answered. He's being blackmailed. It is a very simple plot. I mean, I think noir is known for being very simple, for being very straightforward in a lot of ways, but there are some twists and turns in this book that I wasn't necessarily expecting, or I didn't know where they were going to go. I think something very interesting in this book is how much Philip Marlowe cares about his clients and how much he's willing to do for them, whether it's what they ask for or not. So if you have never read Raymond Chandler's The Big Sleep, I would definitely suggest checking this out. So the last book that I read in December was The Mistletoe Murder by P.D. James. I found this in a free little library earlier in the year, and I wasn't planning on reading it at Christmas time, but I ended up reading it at Christmas time. This has 4 short stories that were collected posthumously, but were written at all different times. So a couple of them were written in the 60s, a couple of them were written in the 90s, and this has 2 Adam Dalgliesh short stories. Adam Dalgliesh is one of P.D. James's most famous detectives and one of my favorite detectives, and I have been reading a lot of Adam Dalgliesh this year, and I liked all 4 of the stories in this book. One is about a young mystery writer who is often asked if she was actually involved in any murders. One is about a man who works in an office and perhaps misuses that privilege. One is about Adam Dalgliesh and his extended family and solving a cold case. And the last short story features Adam Dalgliesh and a mystery he wasn't prepared to get involved with. Those were the 9 books that I read in December. All of them were for readathons, and it was really fun. It was a fun reading month. It was fun to read almost exclusively mysteries for the month. I think in January I'm ready to not read some mysteries for a little while. Let me know if you've read any of these books and what you thought of them in the comments below. Thanks so much. Bye. Magpie Murders, not The Magpie Murders. Magpie Murders